Well, happy Easter, everybody, and welcome to Spero Day. My name is David Perez, and I am the minister at this very unique church in Nashville, Tennessee. And somehow on this Easter, you have found us, and I just want to welcome you. We are a church that just holds to the fact that God's love is endless and it includes all. It just has this far reach. And we are just this newer church in Nashville, only about 5 years old, but we are growing and growing. People are finding us because they're discovering that they can rethink and reimagine a new kind of Christianity without ever having to leave their faith or even a church. They can reform it and evolve it, and that might be you. So I want to welcome you to this Easter. So if you are watching in some city somewhere else in the United States, maybe even here somewhere else in Nashville, or somewhere around the world, I know we have people that watch us internationally, and so a special shout out to everyone who is watching. So thank you. Happy Easter, and thanks for joining us here at Spero Day.
Hi, Spero Day. My name is Jenna, and we are so glad that you are joining us today. When I first came to Spero Day, I honestly didn't know what to expect. I came in with a lot of wounds, a lot of hurt, and a lot of baggage from many years leading in other churches. And when I first walked through these doors, I was scared. I just didn't know if I could continue going to church anymore. But something on that first Sunday stuck. And I don't know that I could articulate it, but something kept bringing me back. And as my husband and I kept coming back, we started to feel a real, genuine love and support in this building. We started to feel like we had a home and that we could belong here just as we were. I didn't feel like I had to believe the same things as the person next to me. I didn't feel like I had to put a mask on. I didn't feel like I had to be anything other than who I am. And that to me is special, and I know it's not found everywhere. What I wish for you is that as you join with us here at Spero Day, that you would feel a sense of belonging, a place where you could feel safe just as you are, a place that you didn't feel judged for whether you believe the right or the wrong thing, but that you could just exist, that you could find healing here.
Well, it was 1 year ago this week that I lost my sister Diane. She died suddenly, and she was much too young to pass. They did everything they could to save her. There was a life flight, 2 emergency surgeries, but they just couldn't save her. And this wonderful person who was filled with so much goodness, filled with so much life, was just gone. And her death came with absolutely no warning. It was much too fast and with no time to say goodbye, no time to say all the words we needed to say to her. There was no time to tell her that we loved her and how she impacted our lives. There was no time for a final embrace or a final kiss. Even her own 20-something-year-old kids, they just got a phone call from my brother-in-law, their father, telling them that Mom's gone. And that was it. And in the days and months that followed, there were times that I just flailed a bit, and I was a bit numb. Most of all, I just wondered about the randomness of it all and just how unfair life can be when stories, beautiful stories, rich, layered life stories just get, cut off without a sense of explanation. My sister was a hopeful, intelligent, vivacious, accomplished woman. She wanted to see her children thrive as adults. I'm sure she looked forward to planning her daughter's wedding at some point. She looked forward to seeing her son, her PhD son, get married. I know she looked forward to welcoming grandchildren into her arms, and she looked forward to celebrating silver and golden anniversaries with my brother-in-law. She wanted to contribute. She wanted to teach and worship and celebrate and love and laugh and serve and travel and explore, live. She wanted to live. And I know as I say these words, I say them from a privileged place. I get it through all the decades of my life, and I'm well aware that there are babies whose mothers exit this world just as they enter it. There's parents who lose their toddlers to cancer, or school-age kids to gun violence. There's men and women all around the world who regularly are confronting death from starvation, terrorism, war, disease, poverty, abuse, neglect, natural disaster. And I know that my experience of loss is neither unique nor dramatic. It's just part of the human condition. As the 8th century Gregorian chant goes, in the midst of life, we are also in death. And so this week, the Christian tradition celebrates Easter, the celebration of God's love through the triumph of Christ's resurrection. Our tradition celebrates that Christ's tomb is empty and there is a bright new day and it has dawned, it's all up ahead. But this year, honestly, I continue to have some residual grief over my sister's death. I worry about my 93-year-old father, who a couple years ago had to bury my stepmother, but now has to bury his oldest daughter. I know we live in a country that's very divided, and it looks like we're going into a very tumultuous election year. We still have wars going on in Ukraine and Israel, and this week I attended 2 events. One was about the war in Israel and how clergy need to be more aware of it. And then I was also interviewed on a Nashville TV station about the hope that Christian spirituality can give to gay and bi and trans people. So, as bright as this day can be, there's unique aspects of this narrative, Easter narrative, that I'd like to focus on, and here it is. On the morning, Sunday morning, when Christ, on Easter morning, it says this: early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb. She saw the large stone was moved away, and from the entrance. So she ran to Simon and Peter and to John, and she said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they put him." So Peter and John started going to the tomb. They were both running, but John ran faster than Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down, looked in, and he saw the pieces of linen cloth lying there, but he did not go in. Well, do you see there's a part in this that sticks out to me, and it might be very unnoticed to you, but I'm very drawn to part of this description where it says, early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark. I love that, while it was still dark. For me, especially this year, that's where Easter really begins, I think. It begins in the darkness. It begins in the darkness of fear and confusion and loss and bewilderment, in the darkness of doubt and pain, when we lose certainty. And you know, all the creeds and clarifications of Christian theology and our tradition, you know, all those things that said, you know, we've got everything explained, we got an answer for all this, all of that came later than this morning. On that morning, it was still dark. So, you know, pay attention to this idea that resurrection and resurrections, they happen in the dark. What came first was that hope of Mary in the midst of loss. And here's what happens to ordinary people when they brush up against an extraordinary God. Here's what it looks like when broken, hungry humanity encounters this inexplicable, explicable love that only shows itself in the dawn. You know, for many of us who have been around the Christian tradition, the key to the Easter idea is always, right, we have to believe as a fact that Jesus rose physically, bodily, literally from the dead. And Christianity's huge proclamation is, as long as you believe that historically, if you believe in that resurrection, we're told that we're safe. And we're told that's what authenticates our faith. But I've come to the conclusion that my faith is bigger than me having to believe now in some past event. Because some of us encounter, and we need other ideas, bigger ideas of the Easter narrative. And it's the whole idea that resurrection is the reality for everything. And especially now, resurrections are happening all around us. So perhaps our burden isn't having to prove something happened 2,000 years ago and having to believe it was literal now. Perhaps that's not the key. Perhaps it's bigger, and that we just see that renewal and rebirth, resurrection is happening everywhere. I wasn't there 2,000 years ago, and proving that now is so uninteresting to me. And the fact that I just tell myself to make a mindful agreement to believe now in something then, that doesn't transform my life. That's not what brings the continued presence of God. It's just not enough. The point is, the resurrection, it happened in total darkness. It happened sometime in the pre-dawn hours on that Sunday morning. This great mystery, it transpired in secret. There was no sunlight to illuminate the event. No human being witnessed it. And even now, 2,000 years later, no human narrative can contain it, explain it, prove it. I know they always try, but this mysterious event, it exceeds all of that. And so whatever the resurrection ends up being to you, physical, literal, metaphoric, symbolic. It is the reality of what happens now. It is the fullness that God shows up in the darkness, and many times our eyes are shielded from that. And on that starry night in that ancient tomb, God worked in darkness to bring about life from death. And it just transcended everything. That's what gives me hope. You know, earlier in my life, honestly, the things I'm saying now, I would be frustrating myself. I'd go, no, you need to believe it now. But I have learned in the process of life's hurts and grieving my sister's death that no story in my tiny mind would ever be enough to redeem catastrophic loss. Right? Death, the loss of somebody we love, can be an abyss. It can be a violation of our lives, and no fact can change that. Only mystery in the resurrection and the darkness suffices. Only my faith that somehow God will complete every story that loss and death interrupts, and it's most likely done in the dark. It's not certainty I need. Certainty doesn't give me that assurance. Ironically, it's only mystery and the fruit of what happens in the dark that gives me hope. And in this account, Mary Magdalene, she ends up seeing Jesus first. Peter and John, they take off when they see the tomb's empty. They leave. Mary is the one who stays. She's the one still confused, bewildered. She's the one in the dark. And then she's the one in her unbearable loss where God shows up in the dark. In my own life, I am finding it increasingly true that clarity, hope, and healing, they don't often happen in the light. They come in the darkness of hard places. They come beyond well-lit platitudes and quotations of Scripture. I find those things now inadequate. For me, Christ rises. He resurrects in my life most vividly in the darkness of my life. And because sometimes it's dark, I fail to see it when it's happening. So many times I have to let go of my old ideas about God or my expectations about how God will show me in the light. But when I try to grab God, so to speak, in the light, God just kind of disappears into the darkness. But God comes. There's a whisper in my soul in that moment, in that mystery, in that darkness, that God is present there in my life. In a beautiful essay on the resurrection, theologian and writer Chris Barnes reminds us of what actually matters in the Easter season. And he says this: that question that Easter asks us is not, do we believe in the doctrine of the resurrection? Frankly, that is not particularly hard. Our doctrines bend easily to conform to the darkness. What the Gospels ask is not, do you believe, but have you encountered the risen Christ? As I continue to struggle a bit with the loss of my sister and struggle with the fact that my dad had to bury his oldest daughter, and struggle with the fact that my brother-in-law, my niece, and nephew are without a wife and mother, it isn't belief in theology that matters. What matters is encountering Christ rising in that mystery. It's the resurrected Christ rising in my life now that gives me hope. Only as I look back at the grave, sides of my life, and then in the darkness, that I see new life happen. Poet R.S. Thomas describes the brief way in his poem, The Answer. There have been times when, after long on my knees, in a cold chancel, a stone has rolled from my mind, and I have looked in and seen the old questions lie, folded in a place by themselves, like the piled grave clothes of love's risen body. This Easter, may the Christ who rose in the darkness lead us into new hope. May we find the hope that God, in half-lit places of our life, shadowy places of our life, hard places in our life, shows up. May we linger at the graveside in the darkness until God whispers our name. And may we hang in there in the darkness for life's greatest and God's greatest mystery. Christ is risen in me, and he is risen in me indeed. Happy Easter, everybody.
There's a time for everything under the sun. At least that's what I had learned when I was young. But lately, all the time has shown is you can't trust everything you're told. This is what it's like at 31. I'm not really sure what I believe. Is it history or is it poetry? But lately all I'm certain of is there's a God and he is love, and a time for everything under the sun. But when is it time for a liberation? When is it time for new revelation? 'Cause this doesn't feel a whole lot like the Jesus we're preaching. No, this doesn't look a whole lot like the loving we're living. No, this doesn't sound a whole lot like salvation. I don't like the labels anymore. Feels like propaganda getting us through their doors. 'Cause what we say and what we mean, they don't line up and they make us mean. What the hell are we even fighting for? I'm tired of the politics and the wars, and using our theologies like swords. We've got 40,000 different names, and every name is shifting blame. I mean, is this really what the bride is for? Oh, and who said we decide who's in or out? As if you're gay, you know you'd better straighten out. Or if your skin makes us feel unsafe, just quiet down, take up less space. When's the time we learn to shut our mouth? Oh, and when is it time for a liberation? When is it time for new revelation? 'Cause this doesn't feel a whole lot like the Jesus we're preaching. No, this doesn't look a whole lot like the love we're salvation, salvation. I know the truth is worth fighting for, but something isn't lining up anymore. 'Cause a God who'd rather die than not have us right by his side is more about love than we'll ever know. Is more about love than we'll ever know. Than we'll ever know. Than we'll ever know. So from this day until my final breath, I'm gonna give away everything inside my chest. I won't withhold what's given me, even if you disagree. 'Cause there's a time for everything under the sun, and it's time for us to learn how to really